else is new. We are here. Jen's apparently trading me places.
I'm going to trade her places again. I'm just going to plug in the
iron.
iron.
We're going to talk about the Prim Village quilt. I've been working on this one at home, and you've probably seen it on our Instagram and Facebook feeds because that's what I do.
Right.
And but I want to talk about this one just for a minute. First off, thing you need to know is this pattern. Sorry, trying to find our video.
Oh, there we go.
This pattern is 100% exclusive to the box kit. It is not in a book. It will not be printed individually. They've been doing this with the last few of Lori's lines. There's a table runner and a quilt.
They do it with other designers. Moda does it too.
Moda does it too.
So does Free Spirit.
So it is 100% exclusive to the kit. So if you want the Prim Village quilt, you gotta buy the kit. It's $104.99. $104.99. And then if you buy it back, you probably get free shipping. Anyway,
it's true.
So that's what this is. This is the Prim Village quilt. It is a solid throw. I want to say it's like 57 by 70 something. There are two different sizes on the box.
67
so
by 75.
It's not.
That's
a lie.
That's a lie.
It's like 50 something by. Anyway,
whatever.
It's a solid throw. Yeah, there's two sizes on the box. It's confusing.
That's fun. We'll have to let them know that.
Yeah. Anyway, but this quilt was my tiny itty bitty turn dashes. These turn dash blocks finished at 3 inches.
They're so cute,
and they're adorable, and they are tedious. But my trick to getting them done is that they were my leaders and enders while I did finish my spooky sampler along with other things.
Right.
And so tedious tiny blocks like this, you guys,
and have them next to your machine.
You just gradually feed them through, gradually square up some. Well, I squared up all my half-square triangles at once to force myself to do it.
Right.
But then after that, I had them all paired up in cute little stacks. There were 48 little stacks on my cutting board, and gradually, a few at a time, I pieced them as leaders and enders, and now they're done.
Yay!
It's amazing. Anyway, but we wanted to talk borders again because
I don't think you can ever talk borders too much.
As a long armors, we know that borders are a consistent issue.
And they can be tricky, and we want to talk about how to use them to make a quilt square. Now,
I want to point out something is not perfect.
No, and they never are, because you know what? We're human.
We're people.
And people aren't perfect.
So one thing I want to mention, because we have some tiny piecing and things like that, my house blocks all ended up a tiny bit narrower than they should be, and my turn dashes all ended up a tiny bit bigger than they should be. And so my turn dash rows ended up a little bit longer than my house rows, and so we did some stretching. And so you can see where my rows come in here. And then the other thing about this quilt is that this piece of sashing is pieced.
Right.
So the only straight, solid pieces of sashing come in between the rows. And so you'll see a lot of kind of wave in and out on the outside.
So horizontally, all of her sashing is the same length. And so that's a good, absolute to go off of. However, vertically, she's a little wobbly.
So all my sashings,
normal.
I cut.
It happens.
When I cut my horizontal sashings, I used the number in the pattern, but that was after measuring my pieces. And I cut my horizontal sashings to essentially be the in-between number between how wide my house rows were and how wide my turn dash rows were. And so I found the average. So my turn dash rows came in a little bit and my house rows got stretched out a little bit. So when we do borders, we don't just cut the number in the pattern.
Right. The number in the pattern
is a pattern writer won't give you a number.
The number in the pattern is a nice goal to shoot for. Now, you're going to find some pattern writers, especially some of our old school pattern writers.
They won't give you a number at all.
She won't ever give you a number. She'll tell you to measure. And I have a lot of people who say, why? Why do we have to measure? Just give me the number, I cut it, I put it on. And the problem is, because we're not perfect in our piecing. And there's going to be a little bit of fluctuation. And we do not want fullness in a border. And by fullness, we mean, I don't want the border fabric to be bigger than the quilt itself. And guys, there are times I've had 12 extra inches in an outer border versus what the center measures at. Because we do what we call floating a border. Which means we just, like Liz did here, she sewed all of her border strips together in one big long piece. Well, a lot of people just sew it down the side, cut off the bottom, turn, and keep going. That doesn't work, and we're going to tell you why. But first, we're going to tell you how we measure and why we measure.
So when it comes to measuring for your border, we're going to do this long border on the outside. I need
because
to
it's the one that's not perfect.
Because it's not, well, and because my top and bottom right now
are one solid piece.
You can already see they have one solid piece. And so when I do borders, I would go for, potentially, you've got top and bottom and then left and right. And then if you're doing a second border, you don't do left and right and then top and bottom. You do top and bottom again, and then left and right.
Right.
So it kind of creates that log cabin-y effect that holds things together better and keeps things square.
Right.
So because my top and bottom are solid pieces,
and this was
and the left and right are pieced, or even if it wasn't pieced, my top and bottom were sewn on last.
So
we do left and right first.
Right.
So the way to measure a border, you guys, you can see some fullness in the side right here. So we don't measure the sides.
We never measure the edge of the quilt.
Down the middle from top to bottom. Okay, I've already measured this one.
Okay, but if you don't, a lot of us have a cute little tape measure.
It goes to 60 inches.
And they're lovely if you're doing a throw-sized quilt. If you're not, next time you're at any store, pick up a nice solid tape measure that lives in your sewing kit.
Yes, I always have one that works in my sewing room.
But what you're going to do is go all the way to the bottom. Now, if we weren't doing this on a video, I'd probably be on the carpet or on the design wall to do it. And we're going to measure what this says. And the pattern might say it should be 56 inches. And we might say it's going to be 56 1/4. Or it might be 55 3/4. Whatever your quilt is, that's what you cut it to. Okay?
Yep. Okay, so you measure that, and then you cut both borders for the sides that same length.
The same length.
Okay? That way, this is what helps us square our quilts. Okay? So the next thing you do is I pin the center of the border. I fold it in half. Guys, this is how we load a quilt on the long arm. We fold it in half and find the middle, and I put a pin there. And I did the same thing on the side. Okay? I folded my quilt in half and found the middle. So this goes back to mine and Jen's whole rule of matching what matters, right?
Right.
So the reason we start in the middle is because it averages out the stretch or the give or the wave or whatever it is ends up being.
If there's fullness in the quilt versus in the border, we can average that out. We can distribute that along the full length of the quilt. Or if there's fullness in the border because maybe our quilt's a little tight right there, we can average that out over the full length of the quilt.
See, I then come in and I start going into the middles, okay?
Right. So she's going to distribute it into different sections. So now she'll do one here and here, just kind of distributing a little bit. And then that will average out, because really probably the most she's off here total is 1/4 of an inch-ish. It's not that much. But if you leave it all for one spot, you're going to end up with a pleat or a pucker. And we don't want that. So we're going to distribute any fullness over the full length of the quilt.
Yep.
Right.
So we just go through.
And she's going to scoot it down so I can do this side.
And we just pin our borders, you guys. The other thing is, even if you've measured, pin it anyway.
Pin it anyway.
Okay? I know I'm not a pinner, you guys.
Liz
I don't pin while I piece very often, but when it comes to a border,
you pin.
we always pin.
Now, it does take longer, but let me tell you why we pin. I'm going to talk about the mechanics of a sewing machine for a minute. Now, when you've got a machine here, I don't care how nice and fancy your sewing machine is, it probably only has one set of feed dogs, unless you put a walking foot on it. Okay?
Even then, those aren't perfect.
They're not perfect either. And because there's one set of feed dogs on the bottom, it is going to still be ever so slightly feeding your bottom fabric at a more regular rate than your top fabric. Okay? And because of that, it's not usually a big deal with small piecing or even medium-sized piecing. But when we get into long borders, especially on your large bed-sized quilts.
Oh my gosh,
the bigger the quilt, the bigger the
and
quilt,
the wider the border.
And the wider the border, the more discrepancy. So, it's going to feed that through more evenly. So it's really normal for the top to get either pushed too fast or stretched. And that causes problems. And when we do that, especially over the course of multiple borders, you know, we do a stop border and then another border and then maybe a third border. It's constantly, the border's getting to be bigger than the quilt itself. And in the end, we end up with a quilt that looks like this. And we don't want that. We don't want wings on the edges of our quilt. We want it to be nice, square 90-degree corners. And really the way to get that is by measuring and pinning borders. Always. Now, guys, I have to tell you, this is like my second least favorite part of quilting. I like little piecing. That's where my joy is. I don't like putting small things together. I think that's fun. When things get big, I'm not happy. Like, that's my misery, is feeding big stuff like this through my sewing machine. So I totally understand not wanting to do this. I totally understand being like, this is just an extra step and I can fake it.
I have people tell me all the time, they're like, but my long arm says my quilts are perfectly square. I'm like, she's lying to you.
Yeah. I can tell if you. Sometimes I send little love notes home with quilts, like, thank you for your quilt being so awesomely square.
Because it does make my life
easier.
Now, let me show you another trick. If you want to evenly distribute, this is a weighted pin bowl. It's kind of heavy. I'm going to put it at the bottom here, so instead of just stretching at the top a little bit, I'm holding kind of an even stretch throughout the fabric.
Right. So that helps a lot. The twilters. We're the twilters. Twin twilters. Thanks, Dave. That's great. Sorry. Okay, but guys, because of the mechanics in which your sewing machine works, it doesn't get fed through evenly. It just never will. And so this is a necessary step.
I know it's tedious.
It's tedious, I know, but honestly, this whole hobby is tedious. If tedium's not your thing, we might have to find you something else to do with your time. So Liz has got both of her side borders about pinned on, and we can just run them through, because this is why she pinned both sides, guys. I'm going to make her do it because it's her quilt and she should sew it. But let me tell you why she pinned both sides.
You need to scoot this over.
And it's because we are compulsive chain piecers. And
I go with lazy, but yes.
And she is just going to go straight from one border to another without taking it off the machine. Right? See? I know her. We've met.
Where's my pin bowl?
It's right here. I should turn the iron on for you.
You should. Okay.
Okay, and while she sews, I want to talk to you about other fun Prim stuff.
Okay. I was going to bring my project.
What
my retreat project.
Oh, Liz is doing her retreat project out of Prim.
Yes, but it has nothing to do with houses.
It has nothing to do with houses or this. So I've been doing the Prim Sew Along, which is super fun. This is block 8. If you want to join in, you can totally join in. It's going to be, all the instructions are going to be on Lori Holt's blog forever. So they're not going to go away. You don't have to worry that you're behind or you can't catch up or something. But I am kind of loving everything about it. So this is done obviously with applique. So I've sewn my shapes ahead of time and put them on here, and now I'm hand stitching them down. I've already got a few things down on this one, like the little star on the sheet, the circles and my flowers. But this is done using an interfacing applique method. There's also
there are people that do the interfacing method but top stitch it by machine.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who do it by machine.
There are people that raw edge it too.
There are people who raw edge applique. We've had a couple of our customers who love to do needle turn applique, and so they do it needle turn style, whatever
floats your boat.
Whatever applique method you like. Now, if you're not sure how to do this applique method,
Jen does teach a class.
We have a couple videos, but I do teach a class because I think it's fun. Plus, I also think this is like the easiest finished edge applique method there is.
I would agree.
So, I mean, I can do needle turn.
I don't enjoy it.
But I do most of this. So, like, with these, Liz told me, bring your Prim blocks. And I kind of laughed because they were already in my car.
Of course they are, because she does what she does while she waits at preschool.
Right. Well, like yesterday, I was at speech therapy. The day before, I was at occupational therapy. And with the whole fun COVID stuff, I'm not allowed in the waiting room. So I sit in my car. And when you're sitting in your car for 45 minutes, I might as well be working. So I do a lot of my stitch work in my car. You know, like tonight, my kids have dance. Guess who's going to be stitching in the car tonight?
Finished one end.
One end. Look, guys. Because compulsive chain piecing.
Come around and just start the other.
Right, because there's enough room.
You can chain piece borders. It's totally doable.
It's totally doable. Totally doable to chain piece a border. Now here's the question. Can I press your border while you sew?
She probably could.
I probably could. I might just give it a go. Just for kicks. After I get around you.
Skinny thoughts. Okay. Not that skinny thoughts help at all.
No, they don't.
They don't affect anything, sadly.
No.
If only they did. Anyway, but guys, I know we've talked borders a little bit before, but we wanted to do it again just because it really is,
I don't think we can ever talk borders too much.
Such a big factor in how your quilt turns out. Especially on a quilt like this, guys. This is a 6.5 inch border. Okay, that is sizable.
It's a good sized border.
And the bigger the border, the easier it is to get it wavy. And the bigger and the more that that bit of size disparity that shows up,
right,
when it comes time to quilt it.
And especially the more heavily your block is pieced.
Yes, if you got heavily pieced blocks and huge borders, it will make a difference.
I love this. We've never done this before.
I know, this is kind of fun.
I mean, we assembly line all the time, but I've never actually pressed a quilt while she sewed it.
Definitely different.
Here's a new experience.
But I was just working on this quilt last night, and I was just thinking, you know what, this is not ending up perfect because, well, I'm me, and I quilt while doing 15 other things at a time.
Well, and nobody's perfect.
And the chances of, guys, I love tiny piecing, okay? I love it. It is kind of an imperfect game.
It is an imperfect game.
Because it's itty-bitty pieces, and there's so much that can get, you know, a 32nd of an inch off.
Well,
I mean, I squared up all my half square triangles just right, and I did, you know.
Well, and you can be accurate at cutting, but you also remember that fabric is an organic product. It will adjust over time. It will never, it's not static. It won't stay the same. And because of that, things are going to adjust. So that's why we have our little fudging tricks and things, because we need to make, well, we need to make adjustments for the adjustments. that sounds reasonable, right?
Adjustments for the adjustments. Okay.
Oh, speaking of Lori Holt, we had to put this one up for today because
it felt seasonal. This is a sew along from like 2 years ago, so please don't ask if we have kits. The answer is no.
We have shapes.
We have shapes, and we have quite a few of the fabrics
Some of them still.
But this was her Autumn Love Sew Along from, like I said, about 2 years ago. This was my version. Jen followed instructions and used Lori's nutmeg brown border. I wanted the blue. Jen's is also custom quilted. Liz doesn't have time for that crap. So mine is edge to edge.
Jen was not nice enough to custom quilt hers.
Yes, Jen was also not nice enough to custom quilt mine. So mine is just done with an edge to edge panto, but I'm more than happy with it.
You know, there's nothing wrong with an edge to edge panto on an applique quilt.
Nothing wrong with it. And to be honest, you guys, I had people ask quite a bit. Like, they're like, would you really put an edge to edge panto on that? And I'm like, if it's comes down between that and it ever getting done, then the answer is yes.
Well, and that's
if you're gonna have to put it in a closet for 5 years while you save up money to get it custom quilted or get around to custom quilting it yourself, then what's the point? Like, done is better.
Right.
Okay. Okay, you guys, that really squared up and straightened my edges right here.
Oh, it's way better.
Okay. See? And the thing is, when I put it on the long arm, it'll stretch the houses a little bit. And then it's going to end up perfectly square, which is awesome.
It's going to be great. All right, so you'll notice we still have a long strip for the borders for the top and bottom. We didn't assume that this quilt was going to grow by X amount.
Yes, I could have assumed that it would be 12 inches bigger than it was before, but
which is a fairly safe assumption.
However,
because she's sewing while standing, which is not how we normally do this, if she erred and had more of a 3/8 of an inch stitch, that's going to change the width of the quilt. So we'll be off a 1/4 of an inch now.
We don't do that.
So we don't do that.
So what I'm going to do, actually, the easiest way to do this, you guys, if you don't have a huge floor or counter space, is I fold it in half. There's a pin. And once again, we're going to measure from the middle, you guys. So from right here, and I'm going to measure our top and bottom, okay?
Okay.
Our width.
And you want to make sure it's not totally squished in on itself either, okay?
Yeah.
So, while you don't want to stretch, you don't want to have it totally relaxed either.
Okay. See, so I'm at...
See, you're pulling too hard. Let go. There you go.
Oh, see, and that changed it by about 1/4 of an inch.
Right.
So what is that? 40, 56, 57, and
57. Yeah, 57 1/4.
Which I guarantee is not the number in the pattern.
Nope. But it's the number of the quilt. And because that's the number on the quilt, that's the size she's going to cut to put on those borders.
Okay.
So we don't trust what it says in the pattern, not because the pattern writer's not trustworthy, but because we're human beings and we're not perfect.
No kidding. Okay, you guys. So, next trick.
How do
you measure 57 1/4 inches? This is tricky. We don't usually use the numbers on our cutting mats because they tend to be woefully
Well, it's not that the
imperfect.
mats are wrong. It's that the fabric on the mat tends to shift. And that's why we trust our acrylic rulers better.
So, this is Liz and Jen's love of Common Core math, you guys. We break numbers down in tens, okay? I need 57 1/4. So, I can work out what 57 minus 36 is, which is tricky.
Which is 21 1/4.
Which is 21
Not
1/4.
really tricky.
Or I could take 30 out of it, which is
easier.
And so what I did here is I put a pin at my 30-inch mark.
Now, I don't use pins. I'll just put a little... I just put a little dash on there because then if my pin comes out, I don't know.
Anyway,
it's easier for me.
So the remainder of that is 27 1/4. So I take my pin and I line it right up on that. And guys, I do use the lines on my mat to make sure my fabric is running in a straight line across.
Right. Which is kind of obvious to do when it's like this and it's 6.5 inches wide. You really want to do it if you're doing a stop border that's 1.5 inch wide.
Yes, make sure it's straight. Okay, so I'm going to go to 27 1/4, which happens to be 1/2 inch before a seam, which means
awesome. We're going to cut that seam right off.
And there we go. So I'm going to take my pin. There's plenty of fabric here. Lose the seam.
Right, there's no reason to have a seam 1/2 inch from the edge. No reason on a border. And you know what this can be now? A leader ender.
Okay.
See, so it's not even wasted.
We're going to do the same thing and go mark our 30 inches. Jen would use a pen. I use a pin. Up to you. Do whatever you want.
Right. There's really not a right answer. Just mark it somehow other than with your finger.
And I'm going to line it up right there. Make sure I'm in a straight line coming this way and do the same thing all over again.
Right.
And you guys, that's really all there is to this, okay? And then we fold everything in the middle. This is my scrap. This is my extra.
Right.
Which I knew I was going to have. By the way, once again, you guys, I'm going to point something out. Selvage is not fabric.
No.
When I pieced all my pieces together, you can cut off the selvage first, or if you're like me, you stick a piece of washi tape at like a 1-inch seam allowance area from your needle.
Right.
And I sewed all my seams together, and then I took my rotary cutter and cut off all the selvages.
Okay, but part of the reason is this. You see how it's puckered in at the edge? You'll find this if you ever put your iron on like a hot cotton setting right on your selvage. It's going to draw in. That's why we don't use it as fabric.
Yes, I've ironed this piece, can you tell?
And it's all puckered. And if this is in the middle of your quilt, or bless it, in the back center of your quilt, the back center of your quilt's going to pucker. And you don't want that, okay?
No, you don't want it. It's not worth it.
So just whack that 1/2 inch off and pretend it never existed.
Okay, then we fold everything and mark centers. Let's see, how long have we been doing this? Oh, you know what? I'm not going to make you guys watch me pin this all over again, but I will post a picture later today of the top once it's all pieced. Well, once the borders are on. I think I'm going to use a flannel on the back of this one.
It'll be fun. Nice and cozy.
And yeah, it'll be fun. So I will post pictures once I get the other border on later today. And then, of course, you'll see pictures of it when it's quilted, and then they'll probably even go to the shop. So, not done with it, probably always.
Well, because you'll be done with yours before I'm done with
That's
mine.
because you're still in the middle of a sew along.
I can't go faster than the sew along. It's really hard.
Mine can be done at my own pace.
Plus, I'm in the middle of like 23 other projects.
Whatever, I just finished my spooky sampler yesterday.
I know.
It's bound.
That's awesome.
I was at the like time to assemble 3 quilts phase, and that's just like
finished nothing. No, I'll finish my dinos. I'll finish.
Dino kits will be in stock again soon.
If you want to pre-order one, call the shop. We'll put
Call
your
the
name
shop
down.
and we can put your name down. We're
Or
waiting on a
email.
couple fabrics to be able to make more.
But we're gonna start cutting them like
Yes.
now because there's a lot of fabric.
So if you know you want a dino kit, email Sarita@jkquilts.com.
Sarita.
And she will get that for you. The Prim Sew Along kits and the shapes are still available. We do have some more Prim Village kits.
Yeah, we have a few of those
Or if
left.
you want something a little bit easier with Prim, they have a cute table runner, box table runner as well.
Oh, and it's adorable. It's got like the buttons and embroidery floss and
Yeah, it's got
lace
everything in
and-
it for it.
Oh, it's super cute.
So it's fun. Anyway, thanks for joining us while we talk borders, you guys. This is important.
Always
Do it.
important.
And we will see y'all very soon. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.